Good morning, Cincinnati. TV Toastmasters Advanced Club 9523 is hereby open. Good morning again. I'd like to welcome our guests, our members here in the studio today, and our television audience. I had several things to talk about today. One is we have our present officers are going out and we're moving in new officers. But what I'd like to do is thank the officers from the previous year, and those include Steve Aaronholtz, Nikki Bishop, Rick Davis, Darren Henderson, Carol Cormelink, Jerome Manigan, myself, Gordon Kelly, and I also want to thank Gary Reese, which was the past president before me. Gary, appreciate it. So we'll get on with the program, and today our Toastmaster will be Sheila Mudd Baker. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you, Gordon. Today is the first day of summer. It's absolutely my favorite day of the year. It's June 21st, and it is the summer solstice. What does that mean? It means that we actually have the longest day of the year, and it's perfect weather. So, being in Cincinnati is heaven today, and being here is great. We have several things that we're going to do today. We're going to give speeches, we're going to evaluate, we're going to have some impromptu answers to not so impromptu questions. And to help us get through this entire day, we have several people who have duties. Our first person is our word power awe counter, and that is Tiffany Everett. Please welcome Tiffany.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. The word of today is stimulus. It is a noun. It means something to provoke a positive response. An example of stimulus: President Bush issued a stimulus for us to spend more money to prompt economic development. Use stimulus throughout your words today. Madam Toastmaster.
And I am going to be first to use stimulus. Where's my stimulus check? I want it now. And I promise, I will be the person who will spend it on the first day I get it. The grammarian, Tiffany had mentioned that she's a word counter, but she is also the grammarian. So she'll be looking at all of our errors and our fabulous use of words during this meeting. But mostly she'll be looking for ums, ahs, you knows, the things we all say when we are terrified standing in front of cameras. Dan McDevitt has been a Toastmaster for a month. This is his very first speech to TV Toastmasters, and we assume his first speech to any Toastmasters group. So, knowing that he has 4 to 6 minutes, we want to encourage him to keep speaking, and he will do so because he has a fabulous title. What brings me here? What brings me here? Dan McDevitt? Dan McDevitt, what brings me here?
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster and fellow Toastmasters. I was thinking, trying to figure out a title and what to talk about for an icebreaker, and the ship idea was already taken last month, so I couldn't go with the ship. And so I had it all planned out and figured I could use a few notes, but a funny thing happened this morning on the way here, and my internet was down and I emailed it to myself, so you're going to get it totally off the cuff from what I remember, which I learned at another Toastmasters on how to remember everything. So what brings me here? When I tell my family and everyone I joined Toastmasters, they're all wondering, why would you want to do that? And I'm thinking, because I love standing up in front of everybody and speaking to all of them. And actually, when I was younger, everyone always used to remark to my parents how well I spoke and talked in different groups, and And maybe I was just too innocent to be afraid, but I'm not sure about that. So over time, I ended up doing a lot of different things naturally. I didn't realize everyone else was so afraid of speaking. And then I was a truck driver for a long time. And as a truck driver, you meet all kinds of people in a lot of different places, and you have to just walk up to them and start talking. Otherwise, you're going to live like a monk and be by yourself. So I did that for 13 years, and I could talk to anybody anywhere, and it didn't really matter much to me. And so I moved on from there and went back to college and reinvented myself. And I became a programmer, so I'm a computer programmer, and I worked in several different IT environments, and I noticed that most of the programmers really aren't very good at speaking to anybody. And since I'm a business programmer and I go to a lot of different places talking to business people, the business people don't really understand what they're doing and are they know what they want, but they don't know how to tell you what they want. So oh, there's another so. I'll throw another so in there. Oh, okay. I broke that ice too. So oh, I hate that. Wait a second. So what happened was I decided that I was going to change. I finished the associate degree in programming, and I decided to move on and do something different. So I took up speech communications, and so I'm sort of moving forward with that. So this isn't actually my first speech, although it is my first speech here and on TV and everything, so that is a little bit different. But I enjoy the speaking, and I enjoy standing here in front of all of you. And I think there's a purpose in speaking. I'm interested, I do a lot of reading, as you'll see when I come up to do the topics, of the traditional people like Cicero and Aristotle and people like that. And really what we're endeavoring to do here is to communicate with people in a meaningful way. And so that's what I hope I did today. I didn't completely lose it. And I hope to talk to you next month. Thank you. Madam Toastmaster. Thank you.
For his icebreaker, Rick Barron will share his 2 life experiences that have had a tremendous impact on his life. And Rick, again, has an interesting title for his speech, which is Impactful Life Experiences. Rick Barron, Impactful Life Experiences. Rick?
Good morning, fellow Toastmasters and our TV audience. As Sheila said, my name is Rick Barron, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here today to introduce myself to you. For the next 6 minutes or so, I'm going to share some very personal experiences with you that have had a very tremendous impact on my life, with the expectation that you keep them in the strictest confidence. For the first, we'll go back almost 45 years. Do any of you remember learning to walk? I didn't think so. To tell you the truth, neither do I, but walking had a significant impact on me. I lived in Hawaii at the time, the land of black sand beaches, palm trees, and bare feet. Imagine learning to walk barefoot through the grass in Hawaii. Well, I got to live it. And as I began to take my first steps, my parents noticed something very peculiar. I walked on my toes. They surmised that the grass tickled my feet and really thought nothing of it. Years later, I would wear holes in the toes of my shoes without the heels ever touching the ground. The doctor said that I would outgrow it in time. By the 6th grade, my toe walking had become a liability. The kids had been calling me twinkle toes and ballerina for years. Well, these are not endearing terms for a preteen boy, and they hurt. I was ready to make a conscious effort to walk heel, toe, just as the doctors had predicted. But I soon discovered a disturbing reality, that I was not able to do it. I couldn't understand why. I wanted to walk normally more than anything in the world. I did my exercises. I even wore casts on both legs for 6 weeks in an effort to lengthen my Achilles tendon, but nothing worked. You see, I'd taken every step so many times that the process of walking was buried deep in my unconscious mind. I walked without thinking, without conscious awareness of the act. Think about it. When was the last time you gave any thought at all to the steps you take? I think it was Carl Jung that said, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our lives and we will call it fate. Well, that certainly seemed to be true for me. I hadn't considered that the process of walking was made up of habits that I'd learned. I just thought that by willing it, I could change. The problem was that with every step I took, I was just practicing all of my bad habits. I was just becoming more and more comfortable with them. You see, I understood what needed to change, but it took years of practice for me to master the change I was after. It took a lot of work. It took repetition. If the things you keep doing aren't getting you the results that you want, you can change them. But first you need to know what to change. And then you need to practice the new way of doing things over and over again until it becomes as comfortable as the old way. And this is something that most people need help with. It will feel uncomfortable at first. But this is the secret to growth. Keep going. Push through the discomfort. That's how we learn. And ultimately, you'll become more comfortable with the new way of doing things. We learn new ways of doing things exactly the same way we learn the old ways, through repetition. Repetition is the mother of skill. Fast forward 36 years for another childhood lesson. This time, I'm watching Peter Pan with my granddaughter, Mia. That's right, I'm a grandfather, and I have been for almost 12 years. It's the absolute best job in the world, but I'll save that story for another time. Mia was working on potty training for the 3rd time and announced that she had to go to the bathroom. I asked her if she needed a stimulus, and she said, "No, Pop, I'm a big girl now." She ran for the bathroom and closed the door. About 20 seconds later, the door came flying open, and she said, "Pop, Pop, I can't unbutton my skirt." She was doing that wee-wee dance in the middle of the room, so I went running over to help her, right? I unbuttoned her skirt, and it fell to the floor. Here's where the trouble started. Mia turned to run for the bathroom, tripped on her skirt, and launched herself face first into the side of the toilet. She cried for 40 minutes while we placed ice packs on her face to control the swelling. She fell asleep in my arms and woke up about an hour later. We typically spend the entire day together on Sunday. We hadn't even had our Captain Hook sword fight yet, but she said that she wanted to go home. I packed up her things and got her ready to leave. When I put her in the car, I hopped into the front seat and flipped down the rearview mirror so that I could see her face. She said, "Pop, are you sad?" I said, "Yes, Mia, I'm sad that you got hurt." She looked at me through the rearview mirror directly in the eyes and said, "Pop, sometimes kids get hurt and there's nothing you can do about it." I said, "You're right, Mia. Accidents do happen, and there's no one to blame." I learned a very valuable lesson that day from a 3-year-old about attitude. My attitude is a collection of my thoughts, feelings, and actions, and only I have control over it. Take the time to learn from your successes and your setbacks. Wake up every day making a decision to have a positive attitude, and pick up your skirt. Thank you.
Mary Arms says that she's been terrified of speaking in public, especially in front of a camera. She's been a member of TV Toastmasters for less than a year. This is her 3rd speech, as Darren said. So she wants to face her fears. And it's hard to guess that she's really afraid of speaking in public, because I think she does a good job. Mary Arms. By the way, Mary's speech is best friends.
Yeah. Hi. Who is your best friend? I think everyone should have a best friend. I have 2. One is my friend Kathy, and the other one I'll tell you about in a few minutes or so. Kathy now lives in Florida, but as we were kids, we lived in Anderson, Indiana. What she did not think of, I thought of first, and vice versa. We have been friends for 50 years, and probably another 50 years, if she doesn't outlive me. Okay, when we were late teens, we decided to go and leave Anderson. But we had no plans, no money. And I'll tell you the truth, you need both. We took off on our great adventure. As we were going down the road, I found out that we were going to hitchhike. And tell you the truth, I almost turned around and went the other way. But as she talked me into it, I went. And I suggest you don't even hitchhike, because hitchhiking is very dangerous. And you end up meeting some strange people. But as we were going down the road, we met some interesting and wonderful people. First, we met a truck driver. But the only thing he wore was cowboy boots, a dress, and he had a very long beard. The second one was a police officer. Now, the police officer was a really nice guy. He gave us a warm blanket because it was really cold at night, so we wouldn't be cold. The third one was the Wonder Bread Man. And he gave us bread so we wouldn't be so hungry and everything. But we decided it wasn't for us, and we gave up, and we headed home. We did get to California. As we were talking about, we were going to go to California. We did get there, but we ended up in the desert. And it wasn't for us, so we headed home. But later on, down the road, I did move back to Southern California, but I got to Southern California, where I lived for over 30 years, and I raised my daughter, Teresa. I'm talking about my friend Kathy. Kathy is a great-grandmother. She is a loving husband, but she's been very, very ill. Kathy has to go to the cancer hospital every 2 weeks, where they take out pints of blood from her and remove all the iron. And then they pump the blood back into her. But she only has one gripe. No more red meat and nothing with any trace of iron. We have been friends, and she's a survivor and a fighter, and that is what I want to be, is a survivor. Now, I mentioned I had another friend. Now, this friend, we have been a long time trying to get together and being very close and everything. A lot of you know her. Her name is Sheila Mudd Baker, and she's my sister. And I only have one thing to say: thank you, Sheila. And as I'm closing, I wanted to say thank you, TV audience. Thank you, everyone here. And thank you, Ms. Toastmaster.
Thank you. I always wanted to have my sister as my best friend, and I have her. That's great. Call up our Tabletopics master to ask a few questions while our evaluators are writing away. So, I am very excited because Dan McDevitt gave his first speech today, and now he's going to be our Tabletopics master. And Tabletopics master ask questions of members of the audience, and they have no preparation. I can hardly wait to see what Dan is going to ask us. Dan McDevitt, our Tabletopics master.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. As I mentioned in my speech, I like to read a lot of the old people like Aristotle and Cicero. So I prepared some questions for you from Cicero's On Oratory and Orders. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what your responses are. Yes. It'll work today, though. You'll be amazed, actually, at how much it fits. You'll have 1 to 2 minutes to answer the questions. You can either answer a previous question, the one that I asked, or you can talk about something else if I've totally lost you. So, as I was talking about, a funny thing happened today on my way here. I had everything all prepared. It was all neatly typed out. Carol had given me a nice format for Tabletopics, and of course I couldn't get on the internet to print it off, so I'll never do that again. But I did write them down, and having lost everything, my question is, what would you do in these circumstances? So I thought I'd ask Joe about that since he's experienced.
Topics master. Although I had been a government auditor, bank examiner for a number of years before retiring 6 years ago, and part of my job was to make sure the savings and loans were prepared for crashes of their computer systems, particularly up to and including the Y2K event that never happened, because we did such a good job getting them prepared for Y2K that their computers didn't crash. Personally, I only get around to backing up information on my computer about every 6 months, which is a little dangerous because I'm still working on some projects that go back several years. So I would just preach to others that they do what I don't do as well myself, but at least try to have a computer system that when you buy it, it's an upscale one, not as likely to crash. Do at least some occasional backups. And then lastly, as everyone that knows me do, I save everything. I save every scrap of paper that I've had in the last 30 years. I can't find them, but if my computer crashed, somewhere in the world there would be paper, unless there's a fire, and then that's another issue for the fire department to handle. Mr. Topic Master.
My second question is from Aristotle. Aristotle in the ancient orders referred to the sophists, which were people that misused the power of speech. Of course, that probably depends on your perspective, but from the orator's perspective, they misused it. And they did that by leading the public in ways that were wrong. So my question is, can you think of any orators or any speeches in modern times where the power of public speaking was misused? Carol.
Thank you, Dan, for that wonderful question. Not.
where in public speaking has the power been misused? I think the misuse of the power is by the media's interpretation of that. We are not getting the true picture. We are not really getting the news. We are getting the person's interpretation of that. So I think the media is the biggest offender in the misuse of power. They have started conditioning us to accept $5 for gas. And they started way back getting us up to 4, and now they're talking 5, and we're hardly protesting. I know a few people that start riding their bikes in protest. And I asked the guy who was riding his bike to work, and I said, have you noticed a difference in your gas mileage? He said, you're the second person that asked me if I noticed any savings in money. He said, I get 18 miles to the gallon with my vehicle, and so he hasn't really noticed. He's only 6 miles away from work, so he hasn't really noticed that much in the few times that he's been using his bicycle. But we need to protest this $5 that they're leading us to for the gas. Mr. Tabletopics Master.
These next ones, I have to admit, are a little bit tougher. The Cicero, one of the pillars of the oratory tradition, says, let me get it here. This is one of the things I had all typed out, so forgive me. A constant and diligent habit of writing will surely be of more effect than meditation and consideration itself, since all the arguments relating to the subject on which we write, whether they are suggested by art or by a certain power of genius and understanding, will present themselves and occur to us, while we examine and contemplate it in the full light of our intellect. And all the thoughts and words which are the most expressive of their kind must of necessity come under and submit to the keenness of our judgment while writing. So my question is, for Rick, how do you prepare your speeches?
Which Rick? We have two Rick.
Well, this Rick. Sorry, I'm still new. I don't know everybody.
How do I prepare my speeches? It depends. It depends a lot on what it is that I hope to accomplish. If I have something that well, for example, I've competed in a number of contests, and in that case, I think I spend a lot of time writing, a lot of time thinking, rewriting, revising, all that sort of thing. So that's, for a contest speech, that's where you're trying to accomplish a certain thing, you're trying to get a certain message across, you're trying to do it in a certain amount of time. For a normal Toastmaster club meeting, I may not even write it down. I may write a few phrases that I want to include, some facts, some figures, something that I think if I'm up here speaking I might forget. So for sort of a one-off Toastmaster speech that I don't plan on repeating or anything like that, it may just be a very, very good skeleton. And I think a lot of people, when they're first new to Toastmasters, they want to write everything down, they want to memorize, all that sort of thing. And I think as you become more and more experienced, you realize that it's being up here, it's the opportunity to try things out that's really important. It's not so important that you memorize your speech and you give a speech like Mike Davis gave a couple of months ago, where he's trying to compete at a certain level, he's trying to get certain things across, and he's into really nuance. Most of us were not into competing at that level, so that's how I do it. Mr. Tabletopics Master.
I have one last question that I found very comforting as I read it. Cicero relates his experience for when he does his speeches, and that experience I think we can all kind of relate to, in the viewing public as well as especially the new people here and some of the others that are more experienced. This is what Cicero says he feels at the beginning of each speech. I turn pale in the outset of my speech and feel a tremor through my whole thoughts, as it were, and limbs. When I was a young man, I was on one occasion so timid in commencing an accusation that I owed to Q Maximus the greatest of obligations for immediately dismissing the assembly as soon as he saw me absolutely disheartened and incapacitated through fear. Cicero is one of the greatest orators that you could possibly read and study up on. So if Cicero was afraid to stand up here and speak, and he managed to move on from that, that was what he did in the beginning, then I think we can all feel a little bit better on that. My question is, how do you deal with that, Darren?
Thank you, Mr. Tabletopics Master, fellow Toastmasters. It's funny, I think there are two kinds of people. Some people who love to be up here, like I think you're one of them, Dan. And other people who hate to be up here. I'm actually one of those people who does not like to speak in front of audiences. So one thing that's important for me is to get up here and speak in front of people, because when I have to speak, then I'll become more comfortable. I know Gordon and I have talked about it. I know he feels the same way. We talked about that Gordon has a speech coming up next week at work. I know you said you feel much better now, having been in Toastmasters for 2 years, that you don't have to get up there and be nervous and risk having the nerves up there in front of the people at work. So for me, coming to Toastmasters helps me to overcome those fears. And for other people, you could probably come up here and talk for an hour and love it. For me, this is more so practice than anything else. And I think just like anything else, whether you play baseball, basketball, bowl, if you don't practice something, you tend to be more nervous and tend to not be quite as successful at it. So I think that's why Toastmasters is so important. It allows those of us who don't like to speak publicly to get up and get quite a bit of practice. Then those of you who do like to speak publicly can come up here and just live it up for 5 to 6 minutes. So I think that's why it works so well for pretty much everyone, whether you don't like to speak or whether you love to speak. And I think that's what makes Toastmasters such a great organization. Mr. Tabletopics Master.
That's all the questions I had, Madam Toastmaster.
Cicero, I'm so glad you didn't ask me any questions about Cicero, because I just would have said, I don't know. But it does say a great deal when you think about people like Aristotle and Cicero, people we think of that were born wise, who could speak anywhere, who could do anything, who literally formed our Western civilization's thinking. When you think about, we are the products of their thinking. Our schools are the products of those thinking. So if these guys were nervous, no big deal. Our general evaluator today is Gordon Kelly. Please welcome Gordon.
As general evaluator, it's my job to evaluate the overall meeting, and that includes having our evaluators of each speech come up and evaluate the speakers. So our first evaluator, and she will evaluate Dan McDevitt's speech, is Laura Lee Gayfield.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Studio audience, TV audience, and Dan. Evaluating your icebreaker speech, even though your speech probably was not exactly what you had pictured mentally in your mind when you were working on this yesterday as to how it eventually ended up. But you did a great job. The strong points that you already had, you appeared quite relaxed, and you shared that one of those reasons that you appeared that way in your icebreaker speech, that it just always seemed that you had a natural inclination for speaking in front of a group of people. Your gestures were very natural. I didn't notice any distractions in gesturing. I've seen people like twist their wedding ring, shift, dance, lean, whatever. I didn't notice any of that. The only regular speaking habit that you had, you caught yourself on the so's, but when you go back and see how many ums and ahs, you're going to say there's plenty of room for improvement, which is fine. That's what this is about. How well did we get to know you? We did learn that at one point you'd been a truck driver, that you've gone back to school, been in computer programming, and are currently pursuing a degree and interest in speech communication. Some of the other things that we may have learned about you kind of got railroaded with the timing mix-up, but that's the way it goes. Adequate preparation. I'm assuming you were adequately prepared. At least you had your speech written up and did at least go through the thought process of preparing your speech like you're supposed to do to be prepared, and you probably practiced it a little bit. Unfortunately, the computer didn't have quite the same ideas about that you did, but it went over fine. That's fine. You had a very natural and audible voice, inflection, and speech rhythm and pattern, so that was all great. Definite opening body and conclusion. This is also probably different from what you had practiced and written down because you opened with your frustrations of the computer this morning. You had your body of the speech where we learned a little bit about the history and things that you'd done in the past, and then you naturally wrapped up your conclusion with a little bit of humor and working with the timing issue at the end. Use of notes, you obviously had them at some point, but one of the great things about the icebreaker is that since it's about you, it's internalized, and it's easy to even make something up on the fly if you forget a point or if something else pops into your head at the last minute. What could you have done differently? Really not much. This was a great example of an icebreaker speech. You did what you were supposed to. You had your notes typed out, you were prepared, you went with the flow of the meeting. They don't always go exactly as planned. I always forget a whole section of a speech, even when I have typed it out. So it was a great icebreaker speech and a good stepping stone and good way to see how well over time you're going to improve as you continue on the communication path. What did you like about the presentation? I like that you went naturally with the flow, and I hope that Toastmasters is a great stimulus for your education and career goals in speech communication. Thank you, Dan. Mr. General Evaluator.
So as you get evaluated, you really should use this as a means or a stimulus to think about and improve your speaking. Our second evaluator will evaluate Rick Barron, and let's welcome Carol Cormelink.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and our most welcome guest in the studio and at home. Rick, that was a great icebreaker. I'm glad I'm going to be your mentor. You're going to make it very easy for me because we not only learned about you, but you gave us a stimulus for some life lessons that we should take to heart. I think some of your strong points, you had excellent eye contact as you looked around the room at each one of us. I thought you projected a comfortable level at the lectern, and you had a great smile on approaching the lectern that I really liked. One of the things that you didn't point out is generally until something is more painful to do it, we don't change to do something else. And yours became painful, walking on your toes, when the pain of being called Twinkle Toes and ballerina got to you is when you wanted to do something about that. And I thought that it said, did you show adequate preparation? And I said, yes, a lifetime of preparation, and teaching us about the conscious and unconscious memory and how we learn. And attitude is very important. I find that when I change my attitude, it changes things, and I'm glad that you brought that up. You have a very distinct, your voice was clear and audible. One of the things that I thought you had sort of a weak opening. I don't like to hear people explain about their speech. I like them to just get right into it. And I think you would have had a stronger opening if you would have taken us over to Hawaii. Imagine the white, whatever color beach I don't know if it's black stones or white. Imagine the beach and the sunshine and warm, and just imagine yourself as a baby learning to walk like that. And then how you started walking on your toes. Your mother didn't think anything of it because of thought the grass tickled your feet. But I thought that would have been a little stronger opening than explaining about why you were going to give that speech. Your closing, I don't remember all of the words of your closing, but your very last words I will remember: pick up your skirt. So that was a good attention-getting opening. And what I liked about the speech was that you were very comfortable sharing very personal experiences, and I like that. I think you did a good job, and keep up the good work. Looking forward to your next ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Our third and last speaker was Mary Arms, so let's welcome Darren Henderson as he evaluates Mary's speech.
Thank you, Mr. Junior Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Mary. This is Mary's third speech, and one of her goals was to organize the speech to determine the purpose of the speech. And it's pretty obvious that the purpose of your speech was to both inform and entertain us. And one thing you're supposed to do is to have a definite beginning, body, and conclusion, and I felt you did a good job of that. It was pretty obvious that you had an opener, you had a conclusion, and of course you had the body in between. And you told us you were going to talk about your best friends, and then you proceeded to do so over the next 4 to 6 minutes. From the presentation standpoint, I thought you did a good job of controlling nervousness. I've seen all your speeches, and I thought you were, each time you've gotten more and more comfortable up here. And I thought this time, I know you were nervous, but I did not really sense any outward nervousness. So I thought you did a very good job of controlling that. I thought you had very good enunciation and word usage, and also good eye contact. You made eye contact with pretty much the entire room as you talked. The content was very good. You told us about your youthful adventures with your friend Kathy. I thought you had very colorful language, and you know the good. Whenever someone gives a speech, you can kind of think in your mind, like I'm picturing the truck driver, and I'm picturing you and your friend, you know, hitchhiking on a Wonder Bread truck, and you mentioned a police officer, so you know, it almost sounded like some kind of a throwback to the Village People or something. The truck driver, the police officer, and the Wonder Bread man. And I hope that Sheila doesn't share this with your kids or grandkids. You know, I don't know if they know all the stories that you apparently have, but hopefully she won't share that with.
Not until they're adults.
Not until they're adults.
And Mary.
And you also told us, you know, on the serious side, why you admired your friend Kathy, because now she's going through some health problems, and you see the strength that she's using to get through those health problems. And then to kind of end the speech, you told us that your other best friend was, of course, your friend, your sister Sheila, who we know very well. So I thought that was a very strong speech, and you had very good content in the speech, and I think you really got across what you meant to get across. A couple things that I think you maybe can do better, or things to take a look at on your next speech. You made some use of notes, but not extremely strong use of notes. But one thing you did have is that you had obviously very small cards, because I could see you turning the cards very frequently. So, I mean, there's not necessarily anything wrong with having notes, particularly on a lectern, but one thing you may look at is having larger cards or even a sheet of paper to where you can still look down and glance at those notes as you need to, but that you don't have to physically turn them constantly, because I think that got to be a little bit of a distraction. Also, when you were up here, and this is more so because of the studio audience, but you were kind of to the side here, and I'm not sure if your voice projected to the microphone or not. I guess we'll find out in the tape, but you weren't speaking directly into the microphone. It was more on the side. Now, it may pick up fine, but that's just something to be cognizant of to make certain that your sound doesn't cut off on the tape. But overall, I thought it was a very good speech. Once again, I can see the progression as you go from first, second, to third speech. I thought you did a very good job, and I can definitely see the improvement as you go forward. So, thanks a lot.
And as we all can see, evaluators can stick a knife in your back while they smile at you. And Darren's really good at it. I've had him evaluate me a couple of times. Okay. Another thing we do to keep things under control at Toastmasters is we have what we call a timer, or a timer report, and it kind of, again, keeps us aware of the time that we're spending up here, and we control that. So let's welcome Wanda Jones, our timer for today.
Good morning, and welcome, television audience. The purpose of timing is to assist speakers in speaking within a defined time frame. It's an excellent opportunity to practice time management. The duties of the time reporter is to define the time requirements of each segment of the meeting and then give a verbal report at the end of that meeting. First of all, being on track in terms of keeping time is a great stimulus for helping the group. Once I did get the timing train on track, I think I was able to be of some help and fulfill the duties of the timekeeper. As we'll look at the table topics, and the Joe, your time was 1 minute 33 seconds. Carol, your time was 1 minute 21 seconds. Rick Davis, your time was 1 minute 38 seconds. And Darren, your time was 1 minute 23 seconds. For the icebreaker speeches, Dan McDevitt, I did you the greatest disservice. And your time was 3 minutes 36 seconds, even with me railroading you at the very end. Rick, your time, excellent speech. However, your time was 7 minutes 11. And Mary, your time was 3 minutes 40 seconds. For the evaluators, excellent job again. Laura Lee, your time 3 minutes 27 seconds. Carol Cormalik, 2 minutes 43 seconds. Darren Henderson, 3 minutes 7 seconds. And Tiffany, excellent job at the word counting, the odd counting, I should say, and Gamarian, 2 minutes 11 seconds.
Thank you, Wanda.
Thank you.
So there's the time. Kind of helps us realize what we're doing up here and how much time we're spending. At this time, I'd like to, I guess, turn it back over to the Toastmaster of the day, Sheila Mudbake.
This has been one of the silliest Toastmaster meetings I've ever been, and I had a great time. I hope everybody out in the audience had as much fun as we did. I would like to call up all three of today's speakers. Please, come on up. Each of our speakers did a great job, and each of them will receive a ribbon. Now, since if you were in 4-H, you got ribbons all the time. And if you weren't in 4-H, here's a chance. Come join Toastmasters. They get a ribbon for every speech that they give. And since this is the first speech, Dan McDevitt gets speech number 1 ribbon. As does Rick Barron and Mary Arms. Mary was not her first speech. Hers says number 3 on it. I would like to thank everyone for the opportunity to serve as the Toastmaster, because that is a real honor to be Toastmaster of a Toastmasters group. And I would like to call Gordon back up, because this is the last day Gordon gets to be president of this club. Now, we aren't tossing him out. He's passing on to the next person. So, Gordon, please come up and close out our meeting.
Thank you, Sheila. I'd just like to say thank you to all the members in this club and all the officers. There were a lot of Saturday mornings where we showed up and had meetings to discuss what to do. And of course, as of today, I'm sure this club is a solvent club. We have good members here, enough members. We'd like to have more members. One of the things I thought of over the year is it would be really good if we could pull in some, I don't want to say really young people, but younger people. We have some age on us. I think people can see that through the cameras. And I think one of the things would be nice is to have especially young people that would like to learn more about filming and that sort of thing in a studio environment. This would be a great opportunity for them. One thing that I've said several times in our meetings, and I want to continue saying it, and that is the number one fear among American adults is the fear of public speaking. Far greater than the fear of death is the fear of public speaking. And I think that's a message that people need to understand, especially out in television land, that that's what this is all about, is to try to get over that fear. For me, some people may use it for practice, which I do, but mostly people fear public speaking. And I think this is a #1 thing in Toastmasters, is to help you maybe not get over your fear, but to become more relaxed and more controlled in what you're doing up here. And that's a big task. I mean, it's very, very hard to do, but come on in and join us. This club, I believe we're leaving in really good hands. And I've really enjoyed the last year. And again, I really appreciate the friendship from everyone here. I will continue, of course, coming to this club, especially since it was my first club. I'll just keep coming here, and that's going to go on. And I will be glad to help this club in any way that I can, so all they have to do is ask. And right now, I'm going to turn my attention more to hopefully getting some speeches prepared and doing some more speeches out of the next book. So, any comments from anyone? We had a great meeting, I think, today. It was actually more fun. So I'm really glad that I'm leaving this meeting the way it is. I think it's a really good note for me to step out on. So I congratulate all the new officers and wish everybody good luck in the future. And Tiffany? Anything to say, Tiffany? Tiffany is the new area governor. So, and she's also a member of this club. And she says right now she has nothing to say, but you will be hearing from her, I'm sure, as the year goes on. Okay, and one other thing, yeah, Darren, why don't you come on up and let's pass the gavel. Let's make it official. And do I close the meeting out, or does Darren close the meeting out? Either. We'll just let him close it out. And here's the new president. It's your new president for next year, Darren Henderson, and it's all yours.
All right.
Thanks for everything.
Thank you. I will close the meeting out in a second, but I'd just like to thank Gordon. You know, Gordon came to our club about 2.5 years ago, and he stepped into the role of president after being a Toastmaster a year and a half. And I feel a lot better about this club now than I felt a year ago. Not to say that things weren't going great a year ago, but I feel really good about this club right now. And I think we have a great group of people. We have a lot of fun. We had a fun meeting. It's 10:30. I think we're very efficient in how we do things. So I just like to thank Gordon for everything you've done this year. Great job. And that, we will adjourn the meeting.